In last week's video, I made the claim that the most important management tool are your one-on-ones. That is, the regular, hopefully weekly, meetings that you have with each of your direct reports that are focused solely around their performance. I promised you at the end of last week's video that I would show you the process of how to do it in this video. As I was going through my notes this morning, I realized that I spoke a little too quickly, that in order to do it well, you first need to do a little bit of preparation. Now, I'm not trying to be like a Marvel movie. I'm not turning what is the content of one into three, but it is important that you set yourself up well. So, buckle up. Let's dig into how you prepare for your one on ones. Preparing for one on ones means that we do some thorough goal setting. I have a sneaking suspicion that some of the hesitancy that people have to meet weekly with their people is this kind of fear like, well, what would we talk about? I mean, after the first time or two, wouldn't we be just be saying the same things? And well, yes, you would, but that's a function of how you set the goals to begin with, which a lot of folks don't, or they say they do, and it's just not well done. So, what is well done? I want to suggest something that goes from roles to objectives to weekly wins. Let me explain what each of those are. Roles, I got the concept of roles from Stephen Covey, his book First Things First, where we look at, you can do this on both a personal and a business level, where we look at our life and we say, what are the hats that I wear, the different parts that I play that are all significant to success in life, or if I'm doing a business, went to success in business, but that are somewhat discrete from one another. And an accomplishment in one role is great, but I have to make accomplishments in other areas as well. So, for example, in my personal life, just to provide example, to say that one of my roles is I'm a husband, another role is father. Okay, and just because I'm doing great at being a husband, let's say I am, and I'm moving things forward and giving life and doing all those good things. As a father, as a husband, I can still suck as a father and therefore kind of fail in this business of life. Um, so I would want to think about each of those roles and how I could be effective in each one, right? And then set particular goals, and so forth. So that's the idea. Let's move this over to business. In my, um, I own my own consulting business, right? But to say that in order to be successful in my business, I have to be successful in at least four discrete roles. So, role number one, before I ever get to do my consulting, I have to be a good marketer. That is, I have to find a way to identify qualified prospects, people who have some need for what it is that I do. So, I have to uncover them. And then that's a slightly different role with different tasks and different goals than my sales role. I actually then, once I meet people, have to uncover the opportunities and help us find a way for a mutual win so that we can start doing work together. I've got to turn those wonderful qualified prospects into paying clients, which then I get to do some of the roles that I actually like doing, where I get to be a coach, where I get to work one on one with individuals and help them become more effective. And then that's slightly different from my consulting role. which is another type and form of delivery that requires different contexts, different modes of work, different accomplishments. So just in mine, I can look and say, yeah, I've got to be good at all of those, and all uh, doing being strong in each of those four roles means I'm successful in my big role as business owner. Okay, hopefully that translates, and I'll give you I'll give you a breakdown here further in just a moment. But once I have my roles, then I can identify objectives. That is, these are significant accomplishments, things that move the needle in each of those roles. And we do those on a 90-day window. I borrowed this, or I'm sorry, I embraced it wholeheartedly from Andy Grove's work. His objectives and key results, or OKRs, were very powerful at Intel, and then made their way through his friends, disciples, and employees to other companies, and of course are still big today. Objectives, significant accomplishments within a 90-day time frame, a quarter. That puts it at something that is stretching, but just close enough where it has some urgency to it. And then from there, we break it down into a weekly win. So, what do we need to do to move, to work towards accomplishing those objectives this coming week? And if we'll do that, that way we can attack it week to week, which then forms the basis for our conversations. Now, let me give you an example. I created one myself. Hold on just a second. So what you see in front of you is a sample one-on-one worksheet that breaks this down. This is the way to do your homework and do some recording. Notice it moves from roles. What must be managed well? What outcomes must be ensured? Right? And space up here for 4. You can, of course, if you had more than that, you could break it down or add another sheet. Second is objectives, accomplishments that are due in 90 days, what would represent real value provided or a real step forward. The third is weekly wins, what milestones will be reached by next week. The fourth is space for issues and concerns which come into play when we, in fact, have the conversation with our folks. Let me show you one that's filled out. And this one actually goes back, this is one I did for myself back in 2021. So shortly after first round of COVID, I had my business was reinvigorated, and so I was trying to be really deliberate. So again, you see, these are the 4 roles that I identified just a few minutes ago. And so in the consultant, the first step is to identify the objectives that go with the roles that you've already identified. You've already broken down, and you understand your work as different roles that you play. So anyway, so objectives. So the first objective, I had a client that we were trying to get major work started, and so we needed to clarify their training and development path for their entire company. And yeah, and that was a big chunk to bite off. Great 90-day objective. Client B had a strategic planning that we were in the offing for, and that needed to be a success. As a coach, I had 2 coaching clients that I was working with at the time. I wanted the first to identify his goal for the quarter and means to achieve it, and simply that client D would have a positive experience. I had some targeted, some numerical ones, right, for sales, right, very specific. I wanted to do 6 presentations, 1 new coaching client, 1 new client overall for larger work. And as a marketer, these were tasks I could check off, right? Things that I could do to put myself in a place to provide, identify more qualified prospects. So that's what I actually identified. This was the real one, and that week was when I created it. Now, of course, on a weekly basis, the objectives, well, the roles rarely change. The objectives change only every quarter. What changes every week are the weekly wins. In fact, what are we going to do this week to move each of those forward? And then what you see is client A, I'm going to do some work this week with client A. Notice that there's nothing for client B, which is absolutely fine. So just because you have this as your you have 90-day objectives doesn't mean you have to work on every one every week. Some weeks will require you spend all of your time working towards the achievement of one objective, right? Sometimes you'll be able to spread out your work. But you can see that I had particular people that I wanted to talk to, that, prospects that were hot. Of course, I've changed all the names. I don't really have, didn't have a prospect named Susie Q or John Smith. So that's actually what one looks like. So that's the work that you have to do in order to set yourself up for your weekly one-on-ones. You need to establish goals for people. I recommend that you start with your roles in which people work, that from there you break this down into 90-day objectives that amount to significant accomplishments moving forward. And that from there, you look at the weekly progress that you need to see. And once you have that and you can document that down, then the conversation itself is just putting a couple of steps in order. But it makes it very productive. And I'll break down the script for that in the next video.